As I am enough. Yes. Woo. That's a powerful truth. Take it home with you. Speak it over yourself every day this week. Because just think about all the ways, all the times that we're looking for validation, you know. I mean, when I think about all of the things that are going on in Ferguson, and we think about the different racial issues that are happening in this country, part of it is looking for validation, looking for someone or something, some government, some police officer, some city to say you matter, to say you're worthy. But you can stand here right now and say, I am enough. And so I'm not looking for the police to remind me that I'm enough. I'm not looking for a government to remind me that I'm enough. I'm not looking for a job to remind me that I'm enough. I know that I'm enough. And from that place of knowing, then I shall see those results. I shall manifest and attract those experiences all throughout my life. Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How's everybody doing? Beautiful. So again, as I've already said, the theme, the series for this month is Who You Are is Who We Need. And we're talking about service. We're talking about serving. In week 1, the topic was sacrifice is a 4-letter word. And I recognize that many times we think we have to compromise, we think we have to give up, we think we have to, like Jesus, put ourselves on the cross and sacrifice ourselves for our family, our relationships, for our jobs, whatever it may be. But actually, sacrifice is not something that we have to do. And so you can go to that message and I offer some thoughts on how we can eliminate sacrifice and begin to make agreements that feel good. Last week, the dwelling place. We talked about self-care. We talked about the idea that each of us walks around with our own dwelling place, a place that we can go to be refreshed, to be replenished, using the Moses story, using the story of the children coming out of Israel or the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, using that story and remembering that there was a tabernacle that housed the Ark of the Covenant. Another word for tabernacle is the dwelling place, and that was the physical representation of the glory of God amongst them. And what we know to be true is that God lives within us, as us, through us, all around us. And so that same dwelling place, that tabernacle, is available for us, this shelter, this place where we can be refreshed. And we must recognize, we must go to that place as servants, as those who are leading in our lives. We must make sure that we're scheduling in self-care, scheduling in time to go to our very own personal dwelling place. And so this week is kind of part 2 of that message. We're going to look at it from another angle. And so I have a question. I think I know the answer to this question for the most part, but how many teachers do we have in the room? Do we have any teachers? Okay. Do we have any coaches in the room? Any type of coach? Okay. Do we have any ministers in the room? All right. Do we have any counselors in the room? Yes. Do we have any parents in the room? Oh my. Do we have any managers in the room or any other type of leader in the room? Interesting. Now, what I've always found, a question that I'm asking myself many times and wrestling with, I always want to know, where do the healers, the teachers, the leaders, the managers, the coaches, the counselors, the parents, where do they go to fill up their cup? Now, we talked about last week having this personal dwelling place. But sometimes your personal dwelling place isn't enough. Yes? Sometimes you need to have something else or someone else or someplace else that can help you to fill up your cup, to remind you of what is true. Because as you're out in the world, and all of you are leading in your lives, really everyone should have raised their hands, because we're all leading in our lives. You're out there giving, you're out there being of service, but that means that at some point you have to fill your cup up. And so I'm always curious about, where do we go, right, to get that sense of refreshment. And again, last week we talked about the dwelling place. We talked about that personal place, but I recognize that there's still something else that may be needed for many of us. And as I thought about that, I was reminded of a phenomenon that I've seen in churches and spiritual communities all over the world. I've had the privilege of being in leadership in many different churches and different arenas, and from music minister to minister to now pastor. And one thing that I found, regardless of the denomination, we're New Thought, and it could be Christian, it could be Muslim, it doesn't matter. I find that people tend to come to church or come to their spiritual community when everything is going good in their life. But for some reason, when life gets tough, when life gets hard, when things get bad and difficult, or when we make a mistake, we stop coming to our spiritual community. And, you know, at one point in my life, I thought it was unique to a certain community, but again, I've had the experience of recognizing that it happens regardless of the community, regardless of the overarching spiritual beliefs of that community. There's something that seems to happen within us that, again, when life is good, we're there, we're in community, we're involved, we're with everyone, but as soon as things get tough, as soon as things get bad, as soon as maybe our finances aren't where we want them to be, or again, we make a mistake, or as soon as we lose our job or something else happens, we get scarce. And I recognize that behavior because I've done it in my own life. And so I asked myself, well, why do we do that? Because it's really a shutting away. It's a closing off. And I think these may be some of the reasons. First is just shame, right? We feel like I'm supposed to have it all together. I'm here in this spiritual community and I'm involved and I'm leading in my life and I'm a coach, I'm a counselor, I'm all of these things. And so I can't, you know, people can't see me down and we have this level of shame. Or maybe we don't want to appear needy because, you know, it's nice to be the one serving. It's great to be the one giving, but we don't always think that we can receive that same level of care, that same level of support, that same level of love when we need it. Or maybe we just think we can figure it out on our own, right? Which is possible. Also, we just don't want to see people we don't want people to see us at our worst. We don't want people to think that we're weak. And again, I say, I understand that behavior. I understand that. I can relate. I was reminded, this was some time ago, I was reminded that when I was evicted from my apartment, you know, I didn't tell my family about it. I was evicted, I was homeless, I was, you know, living from couch to couch, whoever would take me in. And of course, there was a lot of shame for me around that, right? There was a lot of embarrassment for me around that. And so I didn't want my parents to worry, so I said, I won't tell them, I'll figure it out, right? I didn't want my sister to worry. I won't tell her, I'll just figure it out. And it was a lot of time went by, a whole lot of time, like a year went by, while, you know, I was kind of keeping this secret, right? And of course, the way these things happen, you know, a series of events happened that caused me to have to tell it. And it happened in a way that wasn't pretty. It happened in a way that I really wish it hadn't happened that way, right? And it caused a lot of disappointment. And then I had to fess up. Then I'd say, well, actually, yeah, what's going on is I got evicted, da-da-da-da-da, right? And of course, after being open, after being honest, after sharing what was really going on, I was met with so much love. I was met with so much understanding. I was met with so much, if you just don't ever do that again. Tell us, we're here, we're your family, we love you, we don't judge you. We know that life brings different circumstances and situations. We know that. But we want to always know that you're okay. Please know that you can always come to us. It's all good. Even if we can't physically, financially help you, we will do whatever we can because we love you. And that was a powerful lesson for me. And so what I want to talk about today, the topic, as Roy has shared with us, is community service. But I don't want to talk from the standpoint of community service as in you do something wrong and now you're paying a penance through community service. But what I want to talk about is the idea that I believe that we cannot serve effectively without community. I believe that as each and every one of you have raised your hands, as each and every one of you are giving in your life, as each and every one of you are coaches, leaders, parents, managers, healers, teachers, ministers, it's important to be in community because that is part of your foundation. Yes, last week we talked about the dwelling place. We talked about the fact that there's a personal place that you can go to at all times in any moment, and you should schedule that self-care in. But I believe the other side of self-care is being in community service. And so as I was thinking about that, and I'm pretty sure that this word came up in your minds as I've been talking, what I thought about is what we're really talking about maybe is about being vulnerable. Yes, yes? Because that's something that we think about a lot. I've always had, my own personal experience with vulnerability, whether I wanted to be vulnerable or not, and, whether you can actually trust someone with the truth of your life, with your deepest feelings and emotions, or, will this person judge me if they know that I did this? Will this person see me differently if I say that I did that? But As I really looked at the word vulnerable, I realized that that's not the right word. Vulnerable, we use it in that context, but the definition of vulnerable says this. It says that when we're vulnerable, we're capable of or susceptible to being wounded or hurt. And the Latin root of the word vulnerabilis means to wound or wounding. And so that's not really what we're talking about. Community service is not about being wounded or saying, hey, wound me. That's not what this is about. And so I began to dig into the synonyms of vulnerable, which kind of gave me a better, put me in the better place of where I wanted to be. And so the synonyms of vulnerable are accessible, unguarded, naked, and this last one, defenseless. Now, we got our students from the Course in Miracles class with Pastor Yolanda. Y'all know a lot about that word, don't you? Defenseless. And so immediately it took me to the course. Lesson 153, one of my most favorite lessons, and I've proved it in my life over and over again. Lesson 153 says, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. Read that in for a second. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. Now, we've been taught, just recently, President Obama is talking about new wars in the Middle East. The U.S. teaches us that in our defensiveness, our safety lies. That's what we're being taught. And we're taught that at every level of life, right? That you must guard and defend yourself so you can be safe. But this is a spiritual idea that is very different. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. Now, what else does it say in the lesson? I'll read this. You do not realize what you have done to sabotage the holy peace of God by your defensiveness. For you behold the Son of God as but a victim to attack by fantasies, by dreams, and by illusions he has made. Yet helpless he is in their presence, needful only of defense by still more fantasies and dreams by which illusions of safety comfort him. It goes on. Defenselessness is strength. It testifies to recognition of the Christ in you. Perhaps you will recall the Course maintains that choice is always made between his strength and your own weakness seen apart from him. Defenselessness can never be attacked because it recognizes strength so great, attack is folly or a silly game a tired child might play when he becomes too sleepy to remember what he wants. I want to read that again. Defenselessness can never be attacked because it recognizes strength so great, attack is folly or a silly game a tired child might play when he becomes too sleepy to remember what he wants. And so what's interesting about this idea of defensiveness versus defenselessness, when we become defensive, when we do as I talked about, when we shut away, when we become closed because of shame or guilt or feeling like we should have it all together or wanting to be perfect or not wanting to be judged, all of these things, what we are doing is we're operating in weakness because ultimately we've forgotten who we are because all of those ideas are figments of our imagination. They're ideas. They're not real. Right? I mean, maybe it's just me, but in those times when I've shut away, in those times when I'm like, I really can't show up because I'm just not together and da-da-da-da-da. Like when I'm in that place, it's never proven. It's just in my mind. I never actually give my community. I never actually give my loved ones. I never actually give my friends. I never actually give those people that I'm in relationship with an opportunity to either prove that I'm right or disprove me. This is why A Course in Miracles can say that it's illusions and their dreams and their fantasies. They're figments of our imagination. And we use that to keep ourselves out of community, a place that will nourish us. We do use that to keep ourselves out of community, a place that will sustain us, a place that will remind us that we're whole, a place that will remind us that I am enough. Another thing that it says in this lesson, it says again that defensiveness is weak. And why do we say that? Because when we're defensive, what we're actually saying, we're saying that I'm not one with God. When we're defensive, we're actually saying I don't have any power, that joy is not possible, that healing is not possible, that forgiveness is not possible, that help is not really possible. I don't really believe that healing is possible. That's why I'm being defensive. But that's weakness. Because the power within you, the God within you says that you are all powerful, just as the source is all powerful. The God within you says that you are courageous, that there is courage bubbling up within you. And so even as this circumstance has come and shown up in your life, it's here to awaken the courage within you. It's here to awaken the fearlessness within you. It's here to awaken the strength that's within you. And that strength comes from defenselessness. That strength comes from being in community, not out of community. And being in a community, it's about being in a family. It's about having a place where you can just let your hair down, right? You can let down the pretenses. You can let go of the mask. And for Pastor Yolanda and I, that's one of the ultimate things that we seek to model here at CSC. In the welcome, each and every week, we say, the first time you come, you're a guest. The second time you come, you're family. We say in our mission, vision, and purpose that we want to celebrate the truth that God is in and all around us as one family. We really believe that. We absolutely believe that. If something is going on in your life, we're here, right? And we see you the same, whether you're flying high and things are going great or whether you're going through a challenge. We see you the same. Because we recognize the God within you. We recognize that all things are temporary. And so if you're down right now, you will be up tomorrow. If you're down for the year, you'll be up for the next 10 years. It's the thing I love about the law of polarity. We talked about the Kabbalion last week, but the law of polarity in the Kabbalion, it explains that life happens in poles. And so if you're on one side, there's momentum that's going to shift you to the other side. There's two poles to life, and we can always choose which pole we want to be on. And so when I see, or when you communicate to us that you're in a difficult place in your life, we know what's possible on the other side. And that's what we hold. We don't judge you. We don't stand and shame you or blame you in any way, because we know that there is no shame. There is no blame. We know that there's absolutely really no right or wrong. There may be appropriate and inappropriate in a certain moment of things that we can do. But we always recognize, again, as we said, that you're enough. And so we know that the God within you will continue to move you in your life through the lessons, through the challenges, and you will grow. We see you growing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing when we think about CSC is a year and a half old. And so many of you have been with us from the beginning, and to see your growth, to see the ways in which you are stepping up to the challenges of life, the things that would have knocked you down and knocked you over years ago. Now you're just standing because you recognize who and what you are. Now you're going to your tools. You're going to your affirmations. Now you're using the power of prayer. Now you're going back to the messages if you need to. Now you're asking for help when you wouldn't have asked for help before. Now you're seeking advice or counseling when you wouldn't have asked before. Oh my God, we're so proud of you. And this is, again, is what we are seeking to model here at CSC. And I know I'm speaking for both of us, but we talk about it all the time. Your growth is amazing because you are part of this community. Being in community is one of the keys to being powerful in the earth as a leader, as a giver, as someone who is serving the world. And so I was reminded that, again, this phenomenon of when things get tough, when things get rough, that's when we close. And, it's like you're in a desert, because that's what it can feel like many times when life is tough. And then you're offered water, and you're like, no, thank you. No, I don't want the water. And it's just, and that's what it really feels like. That's how it appears from the outside looking in. And similarly, if you broke your arm, would you refuse medical help? Would you just not go to the emergency room? Even though you know that there are doctors that are skilled that can set your arm back in place and put on a cast and take you through that journey and to healing, would you just refuse the emergency room? Would you refuse the doctor? And it's not that Pastor Yolanda and I are the doctors, it's the community is the doctor. Because I know you've experienced it here in this space. Many times the word that you needed, the encouraging word that you needed, the hug, the smile that you needed didn't come from us. It may have come from the greeter at the door, which is why we talk about CSC being a God experience. That when you come to the door of CSC, you encounter the very glory of God, the very love of God, the very peace of God. And so what I understand is that when we're in pain, go to where you can get healing. When life is unclear, go to where you know you can get clarity. When you're having a tough time, a rough time, go to where you know you're going to get a hug. Yes, yes? And do you know that you can always get a hug at CSC? Yes. Do you know that you can always get a smile at CSC? Do you know that you can always get a loving word at CSC? You know, and I say this to you in the room, but I say this to even those that will be watching this on YouTube and beyond. Connect with us in any way, shape, or form that you need to. We are a global community, and I love that we're continuing to grow in that way. And we will continue, Pastor Yolanda and I think about it all the time, how we can make that more tangible for those who can't be here on Sunday. So when I was in college, I'm trying to remember exactly, I don't remember which show it was. It was either Maury Povich or Sally Jesse Raphael, one of those old shows. And I don't remember the topic, but I remember this woman got up to offer advice to one of the people on the panel. And she said, don't close the door to pain, because when you close the door to pain, you close the door to joy. And that's something that stuck with me. It was so strong for me then, I wrote a song about it. Don't close the door to pain, because when you close the door, you close it to joy. And I think that's the part that we forget. We think that as we're shutting away, we're doing ourselves or others a favor because we don't want to be a bother, right? We think that when we're shutting away and we're closing the door, somehow we're going to figure it out on our own. But by the virtue of closing the door, we've closed the door to everything. By shutting out and shutting away, we shut out and shut away everything, even the possibility of healing. So don't close the door to joy. Don't close the door to pain. Because when you close it to pain, you close it to joy. Don't close the door to your brothers and sisters, to your community. Because when you close the door, you're closing the door to the possibility of healing, to the possibility of the word that you need to hear on that day, in that moment, that will simply change and shift your life. And so in closing, I was reminded of a psalm. It's actually the very first psalm, Psalm 1. And it's known, the first part of the psalm, it's described two ways. And what it's saying is that the psalmist is offering that there are two different ways to live life. We can live life, as I talked about, shutting away and trying to figure it out and maybe getting ourselves back together, then coming back into community like all is well. Or we can live in a way that we recognize that in my defenselessness, my safety lies, that I can live unguarded. I can live naked with my family. I can live in that accessible with my family, with my community, because I recognize that I'm keeping the door open to joy. And so Psalm 1, verses 1 through 3 says this: happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked or take the path of the sinners, that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. And I want to just key in on that last sentence. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. Those who make the choice to live in community, to live this community service that we're talking about, they're like the trees planted by the rivers of water, recognizing that there's sustenance here. And so that's why I'm here by the river. And because I'm here by the river, because I'm being nourished by the river, I can be fruitful. And my leaves do not wither. And then finally, in all I do, I prosper. Prosperity, prospering in your life, not just financial abundance, but prospering, growing and flourishing in your life is absolutely possible. And I offer to you that as servants, as leaders, as those that are giving in your life in so many different ways, it's important to make sure that you keep yourself close to a river. That river is your community. Whatever it is, wherever it is for you, stay close to your community, especially when life gets difficult. Especially when the challenges show up. Because what I know to be true is you will move through them much faster when you stay close to community. You will hear the word that you need to hear when you stay close to community. You will get the hug, the smile, the love that you need when you stay close to community. So with that, I ask everybody to stand. Oh my God, again, I'm just so grateful and thankful for your choice to stay close to community. Recognizing that it's the thing that sustains you, recognizing it's the thing that refreshes you, recognizing it's the thing that grows you, recognizing that it's the thing that allows you to yield fruit in its season, and your leaves do not wither. In all you do, you prosper. This is a prospering community. I love that. Yes, yes. And so, Mother, Father, God, we stand here now just making a new agreement from this day forward. To no longer shut away. We know what that feels like. We've all done it. To no longer close off. We know what it feels like. We've all done it. But we recognize that there is another way to live. This way to live, as it's said in A Course in Miracles, is to live without defense. Because we recognize that in our defenselessness, our safety lies. We recognize that actually defenselessness is power. We recognize that defenselessness is strength. We recognize that being unguarded opens the door and keeps the door open for joy to come in. We've spent so much time focusing and trying to keep depression and doubt and anger out that we shut away the possibility of joy and healing and love and goodness to come through. But on this day, at this very moment, we make an agreement to allow the joy to come through. We keep the door open so that all that we desire for the life that we want to live, a prospering life, a life of healing, a life of abundance, a life of joy can be our reality. I know the truth that joy is our birthright, and we make it our objective. We make it our mission. Regardless of what we are doing, we make joy our objective. God, I am just so grateful for everyone that is here in this room. I am just full of appreciation for all that are here and within the sound of my voice. And I speak words of blessing. I speak words of wholeness. I speak words of abundance over their life, knowing that that is the truth of their life. I see only good for each and every one of you. The good that you desire shall be. I expect it, and so I know it must come into being. We release these words now back into you, for you are the how. We release these words back into you, for you are the cause. And we know that you, as the how, will bring forth the fruit of this prayer, the fruit of these words. You will bring it forth easily, effortlessly, mind-blowingly, and dynamically. And so to this, we lift up our voices and we say, Amen, Amen. Ashe, Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.